There has been some major controversies with this film and another Asian-based film produced by Disney. Xiran Jay Zhou, apologies if I mispronounced that, has made previous videos analyzing the cultural appropriations and representations in some of Disney's films. Her most recent videos was collaborating within the Southeast Asian community in making a 3-part video that analyzes the hell out of the movie Raya and the Last Dragon, and it was extremely insightful. I cannot recommend enough on watching those videos, and I will have the links down below. Before I go any further, I feel that I need to address some things. First off, I am not Asian, and this is not a video of me rewriting this movie and claiming it to be a better representation of a community that I am not a part of. For most of my rewrites, I try to leave the cultural parts out of it unless it's necessary to the story. With that said, this video is me rewriting a somewhat poorly constructed story and for the most part leave the cultural aspects out of it. Despite the movie having its issues, it's not a bad watch and shouldn't be written off. Yes, the culture was misrepresented, but for the accuracy that is in the film, it needs to be acknowledged. That's all I will say for right now as we start the rewrite. But first, I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations of the names in the film. Also, I want to just touch on the opening real quick. I think the film would have been more impactful if it started not with Raya, the lone rider, but with Binja explaining the history of Kumandra and introducing Raya. Now let's get started on this rewrite. Raya has passed her test and is anointed as a new guard for the sacred dragon gem. Proud of herself, she playfully tells her father that if anyone just looks in the direction of the gem, they'll taste her fury. While her father is proud of her, he does do his best to convey that being a guard does not mean preventing anyone from getting near the gem, but instead cares for it so it can be passed down to the next tribe. After all, such hostility will only bore distrust and resentment that can fester into rage that will only lead to suffering. As they prepare to leave to meet the other tribes, Raya grabs the trinket from her room. They travel out of Heart territory and into the neutral lands outside of all 5 territories. They pay their respects as they pass by the stone dragons that are all facing in the same direction. Rai is curious at what they're looking at but doesn't get a chance to find out. They reach the ruins of a temple where they spot tents that have already been set up from other tribes that have already arrived before them. Fang is the only tribe that has yet to arrive, but the glow of the dragon gem signals their arrival. The dragon gem is placed in the center so all may look upon it. The ceremony of passing the gem to the next tribe will take place tomorrow, but for now the tribes converse and trade with each other. Raya tries to be professional, but her father can see how much she wants to take part in the festivities and lets her go. She finds Namari beside her mother and the two run off to have fun. After stuffing their faces, Raya gives back Namari's dragon pendant and tells her it's her turn to hold on to it. Not far, an argument stirs between 2 men and it quickly escalates as others get involved and a fight breaks out which causes a domino effect that reaches the center and knocks over the dragon gem, breaking it. All is silent until a rumbling can be felt beneath their feet. It ceases and the Droon appear. Everyone runs for their lives. Binja and Amari search for their children through the frantic crowd. Raya and Amari do their best to run with the crowd to keep from being trampled, but they can't keep up, and the Droon are right behind them. Namari trips and is about to be turned to stone, but Binja saves her. He carries Namari with Raya running beside him. As they get close to the water, Binja gets injured and can't move as fast. The children does their best to help him, but the Droon are quickly gaining on them. He gives Raya his sword and shard and urges them to run. Raya refuses, but Namari pulls her away. Binja is turned to stone and the girls jump into the water. Varana calls out to Namari to swim to her, but Raya swims in the opposite direction. Okay, there is a lot to unpack here. First off, there is this reoccurring stigma with stories that if a main character is privileged in some way, it's often wrongfully taken away from them and they have to fight to gain it back. And often the world is unbalanced until the protagonist regains that position. But the thing is, it's easy for those that are well off in the beginning to believe that all is balanced and right with the world, but if that was true, we wouldn't have a story. Binja invites all the tribes to his home to negotiate and end the hostility between them, and the way the other tribes are portrayed is very angry and spiteful and downright hateful, but why? That's what he doesn't seem to understand, and that shows his privilege. He keeps insisting that the dragon gem is not the reason for his flourishing nation, but how does he know that? I wanted to show the tribes cooperating with each other, not because their backs are against the wall, but because of the mutual respect they have for the sacrifice that the dragons gave and don't want to waste it. The best way I could think to show this was by having the tribes share the gem by passing it down to each other after possessing it for a year or so. The time is still a little iffy for me. And when it's time to pass it on, they all come together in a neutral place that doesn't belong to any of them, where they are all equals. I don't know if this has any bearing on Southeast Asian culture, I was just simply thinking of the story. The second thing I wanted to change and address was Raya and Amari's relationship. Their relationship in the film comes off playful and rivalrous as if they've been friends for years and just had a bad falling out. But we know that they just met in the beginning of the film. By changing the political situation within the world, it makes sense to change the children's interactions with each other, and in this case, I wanted them to be friends that looked forward to seeing each other once a year, even if it's only for a few days, and it would be that friendship that drives their actions in this rewrite. Now on to the cause of it all. The film portrays everyone in the wrong except for Binja and Raya, even though technically it was Raya's fault to begin with. In my rewrite, whose fault it was is not important. What is important is what was addressed in the beginning. Hostility will only bore distrust and resentment that can fester into rage that will only lead to suffering. This is basically what happens to Raya throughout the film, and I thought this would be a good foreshadowing not just for Raya's character, but also what will cause the return of the Droon. Because despite there being peace, there will always be conflict. That's just human nature, unfortunately. Man, this was long. I apologize, but I do feel that I have to go in more serious depth with this film. I'll try not to make the other explanations too long, but no promises. Now grown, Raya wanders through the territories doing what she can to survive. At her campsite, she's startled by a Droon. Running away, they fall down a hill and into the river. A boat passes by and Raya gets their attention. However, a young boy named Boone refuses to let her on board without payment first, but Tuk Tuk swims under Raya, lifting her out of the water, and she jumps onto the boat. Boone jumps back, frightened. Raya scans the empty boat and realizes his situation. She agrees to pay for a meal, but the ride is free. When they reach port, she pays and makes her way into tail, but notices that Boone isn't getting off. He replies that he never leaves the boat. Raya evaluates her options since she left most of her stuff behind, but notices some suspicious-looking people and recognizes a dragon pendant on one of them. She carefully follows them and overhears their conversation about locating one of the dragon shards. Raya follows them to the shard's location, and as they go inside, she scales it. When she reaches the top, a small critter scurries out of a hole. Raya looks in it and spots the shard. She takes her father's sword and uses it to increase the hole's size. Squeezing through, she jumps onto the center where the shard is. Before she can take it, a woman calls out to her. The masked woman jumps onto the center with Raya. The two stare each other down. Raya glances at the pendant, and the fight breaks out. Feeling that she's about to lose the fight, Raya makes a bold choice to call out a name. Her opponent hesitates, confirming her identity, and Raya takes advantage of that. She knocks Namari off her feet, grabs the shard, triggering the trap. She jumps, barely making it to the other side, and leaves the way she came. Namari follows, and the two start falling. Namari takes her blades and digs into the side. Raya's cloak gets caught on a dead branch, and it softens her fall. Namari makes her way down, and Tuk Tuk instantly recognizes her and greets her. Namari hesitantly calls out Raya's name, who's struggling to compose herself after a bad fall. Namari's eyes soften as she lays eyes on her childhood friend after so many years of not knowing her fate, but Raya's eyes stay firm with resentment. With their reunion just as bittersweet as their departure, Namari demands the shard back, but Raya refuses. Before Namari can forcefully take it back, Tuk Tuk knocks her down and Raya rides away. Namari and her associates take off after them. With them gaining on her, Raya does the only thing she can think to do and steers Tuk Tuk off a cliff and into the river again. It worked as her pursuers are forced to go around. A boat passes and it's Boom once more. I thought long and hard about the character Sisu and what it was that she brought to the story, and the honest truth, her character, in my opinion, didn't contribute anything significant that would need her presence. I also wanted to step away from the trope of meeting your heroes and then turning into disappointments. Sisu still does exist within this rewrite, she just won't be present for most of it. The thing that I noticed in the film that I really liked was characters from different parts of Commander joining Raya and then being from different generations as well, having them become somewhat of a surrogate family to each other. I was disappointed that the writers didn't explore these relationships in the film. Also, I got the vibe that Raya and Boone connected with each other more than they did with the other characters, and I wanted to expand on that a little by extending how they met. The reunion between Raya and Amari I knew was going to be a slow burn as they realized who their masked opponent is. I debated on whether Raya should see the pendant or wait until we get closer to the end of the rewrite, but it wouldn't make sense for Raya to get involved unless some familiarity triggered her to do so. Raya is lost in thought as Boone struggles to keep Tuk Tuk out of his ingredients. He accidentally bumps into Raya and the two shards fall out of her satchel. Before Raya can pick them up, the two shards reattach themselves to each other, glowing even brighter. Bewildered, she carefully inspects the shard and confirms that the gem is partly fixed. Boone asks what just happened, and Raya hesitantly answers, the end of the nightmare. Hopeful that collecting all the shards could end the Drunes and bring back those turned to stone, the two eagerly travel to Talon, that is the closest. On their way, they meet a fisherman who's struggling to catch fish as the water keeps going down. She informs them that unless they have any goods to trade, Talon won't let them in. The two have nothing of value, which has them scheming of ways to sneak into Talon, but Noi tells them that she knows a way in, but it'll cost them. They hesitantly let her on board, and Boone cooks several plates for her, which has Raya wondering when was the last time she ate. With her belly full, she tells them of a canal that she uses, but it's narrow. Being cautious, Raya asks why she would need to sneak into her own home. Noi bitterly answers, since the Drunes return, times keep getting more difficult. Raya carefully asks about the dragon shard, and Noi refuses to say anything else until they tell her the real reason for them being here. Raya hesitantly tells her that they think they might know a way to get rid of the Drune and bring back everyone turned to stone, but they'll first need to collect all the shards to make it happen. It's silent between the three of them, but Noi agrees to help them. Boone's ecstatic, but Raya wants to know what she wants out of it. She looks out into the distance at a family that has been turned to stone. After sneaking into Talon, Noi guides Raya through the city, and at first glance, Raya believes Talon to be doing well for itself, but Noi quickly corrects her. The city has been struggling for so long that it's caused neighbor to turn on neighbor, all because of their selfish leader. Noi shows Raya where she can sneak in and where the gem should be, as she keeps lookout. Raya finds the gem but is about to get caught, but Noi makes a scene outside that gets her in trouble. Raya makes a run for it, but can't bring herself to leave Noi, not after everything she's done for her. Raya distracts the guards and tells Noi to make a run for the boat. Boone hears them call out to him. Noi helps him steer the boat out as Raya holds off the guards. Once they're out, she dives into the water. Once back on board and out of Talon territory, Raya pulls out the dragon shard and the two pieces converge into one. Since I took Sisu out of most of the rewrite, I knew that something else would need to take her place in driving Raya to gather the dragon shards. It wasn't that hard to come up with something different, which kind of validates what I said about Sisu's character. I want to take a moment and address the opening of the film where Raya narrates the history of Kumandra. There is something that she says that will be important near the end of the rewrite that helps connect everything together. I'm addressing this now because I don't plan to talk about it much for the remainder of the rewrite until the end, but I don't want to just leave you guys in the dark, so here it is.
That's when the mighty Sisudatu, the last dragon, concentrated all her magic into a gem.
Again, I don't know how much of this coincides with Southeast Asian mythology. I am aware that dragons and water intertwine in Asian mythology, and that will be an important aspect. Now on to Noi. I did not like the baby character just because it felt slightly inappropriate. Due to the implications of the misfit group being somewhat of a surrogate family, I wanted the characters' ages to range differently. Tong is somewhat of a father figure or funny uncle, Raya the stereotypical teen, and Boone is the child of the group, and I wanted him to be the only child because he's obviously been traumatized by the Drune, hence he won't leave the boat. And I want to address that, but I didn't really know how to efficiently with there being another child. The obvious choice was to age Noi's character significantly, making her the senior of the group, sharing her wisdom with the others. Namari arrives in Talon, but there's no one mandating the post. They enter to find that the power has shifted. The people are no longer allowing themselves to be pushed around by their ruthless leader since they no longer have possession of the dragon shard. As soon as Namari hears this, she pieces the rest together and leaves, knowing that Spine's dragon shard will be next. She tells her entourage to inform her mother of what's transpiring as she goes after Raya. Now making their way into Spine, Raya looks for an entry point into the village but worries that her map is inaccurate. Noi informs Raya that the map is indeed wrong and that it was purposely made that way so outsiders couldn't know the location of their villages. Raya's curiosity piques as she wonders how Noi could know this. Noi explains that her father is from Spine and that she would occasionally travel back with him to his homeland when she was younger. Raya hesitantly asks if Noi would guide her. As they look for a bank to dock, the low water levels becomes painfully obvious. Raya goes and scouts the area first. Noi asks Boone if he's going to join them. He quickly answers that he's too scared to leave the boat. Noi can understand his reasoning, but tells Boone that while it's okay to be scared, he shouldn't let the fear control the life that is waiting for him. Raya signals Noi and the two disappear into the mountains. Honestly, I'm happy that I changed Noi's age. This gives her character more opportunities to contribute than just being somewhat of comedic relief. She's sharing her knowledge with Raya, which has Raya feeling comfortable with her to continuously ask her for help, which indicates that she trusts her. As for Boone, she learns of his issue and tells him that it's okay to feel that way, but plants the seed, stating that he deserves more. I think Noi's becoming one of my favorite characters in the rewrite because she's essentially a blank slate that I can add whatever I want within reasonable means. And more than anything, because of her age, I wanted her to be a testament of how enriching life was in Kumandra by having her come from 2 different tribes. This will be helpful in the next scene, but before that, let's talk about Namari. Something that was interesting was seeing how each tribe used their piece of the dragon gem. Tails' chief hoards hers, Talon abuses hers, and Spine, we don't know how they used theirs because they were all turned to stone. But I kinda would have liked to have seen what happened to Danhua. I apologize if I completely mispronounced that. I could not find anywhere in the film where they pronounced her name, so I'm just winging it. After she loses possession of the gem, I would have liked to have seen how her people responded to that, since she clearly oppressed them with it, and the best way I could think to do that was by having Namari come across the aftermath in her pursuit of Raya. After some time hiking uphill, Noi starts to get confused as it's been literal decades since she was last here. Trying to retrace her steps, the two get caught in a trap. Hanging over a pit, Raya looks for Noi, who's tied to a post. A warrior who introduces himself as Tong interrogates Raya on her reason for coming. Raya says nothing and he lights a torch that starts burning the rope. Raya asks to speak with his leader and Tong pronounces himself as the chief, but Noi calls him out, explaining that a leader within Spine would wear a distinct garment and it would never be taken off, even in death. Tong shouts back that since he is the last warrior standing, it makes him the honorary chief. It goes silent as it sinks in that he's been alone for who knows how long. Noi tries to comfort him, explaining that her father is from Spine. It works as his eyes soften, but Raya's rope starts to break and calls for help. Tong tries to reach her, but it's Namari that saves her. Before anything can be said, Tong charges at Namari and a fight ensues between the two. Raya finds a sharp object and cuts herself free. She then frees Noi and instructs her to return to the boat. As she finds the gems, Noi stops her and says that they can't leave him. Before Raya can respond, Namari knocks Tong into the pit, but Raya intervenes, knocking Namari out. Raya's hesitant to help Tong, but for Noi's sake, she'll help pull him out. Still uncertain how they feel about each other, one thing is for certain, they're not enemies. Feeling that there's no other choice, Raya answers Tong's question on why she's here. Tong takes the two of them to his home, where they find his wife holding their child. He hesitantly answers that he couldn't leave them out in the cold. He hands Raya her satchel with the dragon gem still inside. He then pulls out a dragon shard from a chest and offers it to Raya. Boone eagerly awaits for their return, only to be greeted with 2 extra passengers. Before I explain this scene, let me just start off by saying that the garment that I talk about was added for convenience. I don't know if such a thing exists. As for the rest, it was a little tricky rewriting since Sisu was the cause and effect of this part of the film, and truthfully, I detested Boone and Noi coming to the rescue because it took away from Boone's character growth that I thought was going to get addressed in the film. Instead of the trap being conveniently in front of the gate, it would feel more natural that the two stumbled into it when they get turned around, because obviously been a long time since Noi last visited her father's homeland. With that said, Tong has obviously gone a little stir-crazy being the last one left, and Noi, being partly from Spine, feels a connection to him, and because of that wants to help him by not leaving him behind, because being alone has obviously affected him. And thanks to her growing trust with Raya, she's able to do so. But something has to bring them together first, and that is Namari. I wanted Namari to save Raya to show that she still very much cares about her and still holds on to what's left of their friendship. Now sailing towards Fang, the mood is tense and it doesn't help that Namari's cat is stalking them. Tong tries to tell a joke, but it's not understood. Rai tries to tell a fun fact about Heart, but none of them have ever been there. Noi breaks the tension by singing a lullaby that's well known throughout Kumandra, the lullaby of Sisu. Boone serves the soup he prepared using ingredients from all 5 tribes. They start laughing and enjoying each other's company to the point that they can comfortably forget their troubles for just that moment. Raya brings Namari a bowl of soup, but Namari refuses it. So what's the end game here? What are you hoping to gain by collecting all the shards? You'll find out once I have yours. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're causing? After you took Talon's shard, the city was in chaos as their leader was being dethroned. Good. She wasn't looking after her people anyway, but forcing them to turn on each other. And what about your people? Why aren't you home looking after them? I could ask you the same thing, but I want to know why you were after Tel's shard in the first place. Have you looked at the water levels lately? They're nothing like they used to be when we were kids, or when our parents were kids. Fang's shard is the smallest out of all the pieces, so it makes sense that it would start with ours first. What are you talking about? Have you ever stopped and think, what would happen if the gems ever stopped glowing? That's not gonna happen. Damn it, Raya, listen to me. No, you listen. We are going to Fang, and your mother is going to trade the shard for you. Stubborn-headed as always. Not enough, apparently. Still won't let it go, will you? I'll die before I ever see Fang's shard in your hands. Raya says nothing else and walks away, but Namari finishes picking her chains and attacks Raya. The others hear the commotion and runs to assist her. Namari pushes Raya into them, giving her the opening to run up deck. Raya chases after her and sees the gem in Namari's hand. Namari can't believe that the gem is almost completely restored. Raya tackles her, causing her to drop it. Outnumbered, Namari jumps into the river and swims ashore where her cat waits for her. The two former friends stare each other down before Namari disappears into the dark. With this rewrite, it was imperative that Raya and Amari spend time together, not just for information purposes, but to also show the growing tension between the two former friends that will eventually come to a head. Unity is difficult to achieve, but easy to tear down. Up till now, the group of misfits has been getting along well, but when a new individual enters the fray, even with the best intentions, it's never guaranteed that they will continue to get along, and I think this would have been a fantastic opportunity to show them struggling to find that middle ground, but consistently failing until the oldest and wisest member of the group sings the lullaby that originally unified them, Sisu's lullaby. If this was written by the proper people, this could have been a beautiful scene exposing the different parts that make up the Southeast Asian culture. With so many Droon behind her, Namari doesn't stop until she reaches the safety of the water, but the water has receded even more, which has her worried. One of the guards spots her and makes his way to her and informs her that the Droon has breached part of Fang. Namari asks about her mother, but the guard says nothing. She violently grabs him and he tells her that she stayed behind to give the people more time to escape, but the shard's glow wasn't strong enough. Namari takes off, searching for her mother, and finds her turned to stone with the nearly dead shard in her hands. Without a word, she leaves. As much as I like Chief Verana and Sandra Oi, her character is very similar to Sisu, meaning her presence isn't necessary in the grand scheme of things in this rewrite. I still wanted to use her as a trigger for Namari. Up to now, Namari has tried to reach out to Raya but continues to get shut down, which frustrates her, and with her mother turning to stone, that will be the final straw. However, I wanted Verana to go out with dignity. In the film, she kinda brought it onto herself. I figure, what better way for a leader to fall than protecting their people? To my understanding, Fang's kingdom uses a canal system that keeps the land around them flooded so they don't have to worry about the Droon, and I knew I was going to use that since I added the receding water as part of the plot. Despite the others' protests, Raya makes her way ashore. It'll take too long going by the river and she needs to catch up as quickly as she can. Raya takes the gem with her but doesn't get far when she hears the others cry out. She goes back and finds the boat sailing backwards as the water rapidly recedes. Tuk Tuk does his best to keep up with the flow of the current. Raya sees her chance and jumps back on board. With nowhere to go at the moment, the group rides it out. Raya starts to recognize some of the scenery and realizes where they're heading. Looking out into the distance, it's clear that they're going to crash and need to get off. Noi is placed on Tuk Tuk's back, but Boone refuses to leave the boat and runs below deck. With time running out, Raya instructs the others to get off as she retrieves Boone. She finds him crying. Boone confesses how his family was turned to stone and how he believes it's his fault because he left a boat. Raya consoles him and promises that she won't let anything happen to him. Boone holds on to Raya as she jumps off the boat. Surprisingly, the water softens the fall, which helps Tong catch them better. They all watch as the water seems to be collecting in one place. Raya pulls out the gem and they're horrified to see it flickering. When they look behind them and spot a swarm of Droon pursuing them, they quickly make their way where the water is collecting. Tuk Tuk starts to get tired carrying them all. Raya and Tong get off since they're a good distance away from the Droon. Despite their situation being grim, the group can't help but admire how beautiful it looks, but the piece is short-lived as the Droon appears out of nowhere. Raya quickly pulls the gem out, but it's too late. She grits her teeth and hops on Tuk Tuk, who knows to speed up. Raya holds on to the gem, ready in case another appears. Unfortunately, a ravine forces them to stop. It's too wide for Tuk Tuk to jump, but there's a leaning tree on the other side that could be used as a bridge. Tuk Tuk gives Raya the boost she needs to get across and gets to work pushing the tree over. However, a Droon approaches Raya, but she left the gem with the others. Noi gives Boone the gem to hold on to, and Tuk Tuk gives him the necessary boost to get him across. Boone holds the gem out, causing the Droon to change direction straight to Noi, but it falls off the edge. They all give a sigh of relief, but it jumps back out onto the other side, engulfing both Noi and Tuk Tuk. I struggled on this part of the rewrite. I originally had planned to try and end the story's climax similar to how the film ended, with all of them turned to stone together, but the closer I was getting to the end, the more my focus was shifting. I knew I wanted to end it where it began, but the issue was figuring out how to get them there without it coming off too convenient. When it came to Boone's break or make moment of leaving the boat, it was a bit of a compromise. I had my heart set on him physically walking off the boat himself, however, it didn't work out that way. But I still wanted it to be emotional by having him confess the real reason why he's afraid to leave and have Raya make a promise that will be difficult for her to keep. I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit heartbreaking to have to write the demise of each of the characters. I don't know if I showed the toll it was taking on Raya all that well or not, but it was taking a toll on her, and it will come to a head in the next and final scene. The internal message of the film was learning to trust, and oh boy did the writers make sure you knew that. When doing this rewrite, I did keep it in the back of my mind, but it was going to be shown through their actions and not repeated dialogue. The two finally reach where the water has been gathering and instinctively know who they're standing before, Sisu. Raya hears her name being called, and it's Namari. She pulls out her blades, and Raya too pulls out her father's sword. Boone begs Raya not to fight, but this has been a long time coming. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted? What I wanted was to end this nightmare. And you think stealing shards and hoarding them for yourself is the answer? Do you have the shard? Hand it over and we can end this. Like I said, I'll die before I let you have it. Is that what you want? A world of stone? Just like your father. A fight between the two is triggered. Boone nervously watches as the horde of June inches closer. Raya knocks Namari to the ground, causing the shard to fall out of her pocket. Raya tries to grab it, but Namari kicks it away. The two continue their fight, and Boone retrieves the shard. It's almost devoid of any light. Boone places it within the large gem, and it does fuse back, making it whole once more, but it continues to flicker, and the Droon continue their march. Terrified, Boone looks to Raya and notices a Droon heading for them. He calls out to Raya and rolls the gem to them. The Droon screeches as it avoids the gem and charges at Boone. Raya grabs the gem, desperately trying to reach him in time, but like always, it's too late. Raya drops to her knees as the promise she made has been broken. Namari's rage has subsided, but Raya's implodes. She blindly charges at Namari and ferociously attacks. Namari doesn't want to continue anymore, but it's clear that Raya won't hesitate if given an opening. Raya knocks one of Namari's swords away, and she does her best to defend herself with only one sword, but Raya is relentless with her attacks and knocks the other sword away, but Namari manages to knock Raya's sword away too. The two use their fists now, and Namari tries to calm Raya down as she finally notices that they're surrounded. Raya wrestles Namari to the ground, and as she prepares to punch her, her thumb catches the chain of her necklace. All her childhood memories of the two of them comes flooding back to her. Raya finally realizes their grim situation and looks to the gem as its glow slowly dwindles away. She looks to Namari as the two accept their fates. Not wanting to leave anything unsaid, Namari tries to talk to Raya, but Raya speaks first. I'm sorry. I've been angry at you for so long, but really, I was just angry at myself. I couldn't save my father, and I risked the life of my best friend. We were just kids. I would have done the same thing if it was my mother. But if there's one thing that I regret from that night, it's that I didn't chase after you. The two hold hands as the gym goes dark and the Droon approach. With everything still, the stone flickers once more and implodes into a blinding light that reaches all corners of Kumandra. A rumbling occurs as water rushes out of Sisu's mouth. The Droon are once again banished, and those turned to stone are restored as it rains. Raya and Namari are speechless and watch in astonishment as the stone cracks, revealing light underneath. After 500 years, Dragons returns to Kumandra once more. The dragons fly into the sky, waiting for Sisu. She looks at Raya and Namari with a smile and takes off. They dance in the sky and follow Sisu as she dives into the barren river, turning into water that rushes to fill the empty river. Boone, Noi, and Tong all call out to Raya, showing that they're all safe. Okay, let's break it down. Varana was Namari's boiling point that triggered her blind rage. In the film, Sisu was Raya's trigger, but obviously she had to have a new one in the rewrite. But like I said in the beginning, hostility will only bore distrust and resentment that can fester into rage that will only lead to suffering. I wanted it to fester. Up till now, Raya has been holding it in for the sake of those around her, but when Boone, the last one left and the one she started this journey with first, is turned to stone, it breaks her. I didn't want it to be so black and white either. Instead of Namari being visually responsible, she instead is a distraction to Raya because Raya can't let go of the past. That's when I realized that my focus was shifting too. I wanted to focus on these two friends and them resolving their issues because there's nothing left holding them back. Obviously, the dragon pendant is a symbol of Raya and Amari's relationship and what could have been and what was. I wanted to keep that, but I didn't know how important it was going to be until I literally wrote this sentence. In the film, the Druun are summoned by the hostility and greed within people, and they're only able to be banished when enough people put aside their anger and willingly trust one another. Only then does the gem's power come back and banish the Druun, bringing everyone, including the dragons, back. It's a good concept, but bad execution. In the flashback, the dragons all had faith in Sisu, which puts in my head that the last one holding the gem has to be the one that everyone trusts. But they don't trust Namari, they trust Raya. The way the exchange comes off in the film is that they'd rather be encased in stone beside their friend than try and survive in this newfound hell. Maybe it could have worked, but what killed the idea for me was when Namari took off with the gems afterwards. If she had just stayed still, possibly taken a step towards the light, but then looked back at the others, contemplating, that would have been more in line with the concept they were going for. Trust is not a switch you can flip. It takes time to develop trust, especially the kind of trust that this film is asking for. I scrapped that mainly because when the theme of the film is expected to end the conflict, it can put pressure on the characters to forcefully reach that conclusion, making it come off cheap. Think about it for a second. Sisu constantly preaches about trust in this film, but no good ever comes from her blindly trusting people, which only reinforces Raya's point of view of things, that you have to be cautious. Raya has trust issues, and as a result, she doesn't tell those traveling with her about Sisu or her mission. Only after Sisu outs herself halfway through the film does Raya confess, which indicates that she probably would have never told them, which implicates that she still doesn't trust them. The way I approached this was by having Raya confess a little to get the others to cooperate. When each character gives some type of good faith back in return, that's when she tells them the full truth, because they've earned her trust. I'm aware that the conclusion with the Dragon Gem and the reconciliation between Raya and Amari have no bearing on each other, and I wanted it that way. I didn't want to pressure these two characters to reconcile out of convenience to the plot, but just let them make peace with each other because they've accepted their fates. And finally, Sisu appears, and yes, she is every bit the divine dragon that she should have been. Before I address anything else, let me start off by saying, again, I don't know how much bearing this has on Southeast Asian mythology on dragons. I'm just taking more or less what was given in the film and adding a twist to it. With that said, let me explain my interpretation of the magic system. In the opening of the film, Raya said Sisu used all her magic to make the dragon gem, and we learned that Sisu's siblings did use their magic to make the gem. The way I viewed this for my rewrite was Sisu exhausted her magic and possibly the magic of the other dragons. I'm not sure if they have powers themselves or not. Anyways, they're encased in stone, as her magic is being replenished by taking in water, hence the constant mention of the receding water levels. The gem was created to keep the Druun away as the water kept receding, but it broke and everything up. The flickering was signaling the return of the dragons, and obviously it was misinterpreted by the characters. The gem would clearly need to be restored first, hence why the pieces automatically reattach themselves to each other when in close proximity. I debated on whether Sisu should say anything, but figured her presence alone would have been enough. But if she had to say something, I imagine it would have been something similar to this. Oh man, that was a lot and I apologize, but this one was a bit sensitive. Regardless, I really enjoyed making this video, and despite the issues with the film, I did enjoy watching it. The animation is beautiful like always from Disney, the final fight was gorgeous and my favorite scene out of the entire movie. But watching this film repeatedly for this video has left somewhat of a bitter taste in my mouth, mainly because of how incoherent the message of the story was. Sisu preaches trust, but what examples are we shown where trusting someone yielded positive results besides our protagonist? protagonists. Also, some of the decision making in the film baffles me. Namari asks her mother to borrow Fang's army to capture Raya, a human that she easily defeats in hand-to-hand combat, but she didn't think to take the army with her in capturing Sisu, a dragon that they worship and view as a god. Every time I watch this film, it loses a bit of its magic, unlike Turning Red. Without a doubt, this is an unpopular opinion, but I enjoyed Turning Red so much more than Raya and the Last Dragon. I think the characters are more relatable, the emotions feel more genuine, and Sandra Oh gives an amazing performance. Despite Raya and the Last Dragon being controversial, some good did come out of it. The 3-part series on Xiran's channel, for starters. If not for that, I probably would have never made this video, and also, I got introduced to some amazing graphic novels that are written and illustrated by people in the Southeast Asian community. I never knew these existed until they mentioned these artists, and I did some research and found these books. Despite the execution not being that great, what seems to damn this movie was Disney's marketing for this film, which seems to get them in trouble the most. If you're going to claim that your product is the most authentic representation of whatever minority group, you better make damn sure that you can back that up, meaning communicate. If you have a story you want to write, then write it. If it takes place in a community that you're not knowledgeable in or a part of, reach out to that community. Final thoughts, this is Disney at its best and worst. This is an aesthetically beautiful film with enriching details of its surrounding. The story was okay, but due to the poor execution and contradictions within it, it fell flat for me. However, I still would recommend giving it a watch. All films deserve to be watched at least once. With that said, it's disappointing that those within the Southeast Asian community didn't feel properly represented and that this film wasn't the celebration of their culture they were hoping for. Which is unfortunate because we know Disney can do better. Thanks for watching and like and subscribe.